They say every song tells a story, but I say there's a story behind every song. And have I got a story to tell you? But first the song. Now you've heard it before, I'm sure, but just in case, here's Al Bowley to jog your memory.
Come to me, my melancholy baby, just cuddle up and don't be blue. All your fears are foolish fancy maybes. You know, honey, I'm in love with you.
My Melancholy Baby was written by George Norton and Ernie Burnett. Ernie was a former vaudeville performer turned composer, and he wrote his tune, which was called Melancholy, in 1910. His then wife, Maybelline Watson, wrote a set of lyrics, but those were revised by a professional lyricist, George Norton, a year later. And who was the first to perform it? Well, you'll never guess, a young singer called William Fawley. Yep, Fred Mertz from I Love Lucy.
I was looking for a new song. I was singing at that time in the Mozart Cafe in Denver. And I was directed up Curtis Street to this pub. Mm-hmm. And I went in there and it developed that I knew the fellow that ran the place. And he said, Bill, if you go in the back room, I think those two fellows back there are composing a tune that you could use, that you might use. So I went back, and here they were, George Norton and Ernie Burnett writing. And I said, now, if you'll give me a lead sheet and a lyric, I'll take this down to my saloon tonight and burst forth with it. It might do you some good. Come to me, my melancholy baby.
My Melancholy Baby was incredibly popular, and it was recorded by hundreds of artists. I first came across it performed by the gypsy jazz guitarist Django Reinhardt, my favorite guitarist. He was accompanied by Stefan Grappelli on the piano and the mouth organ virtuoso Larry Adler. I got to know Larry after his tour of the UK in the 80s, when he toured the country playing Rhapsody in Blue, accompanied by a piano roll of George Gershwin. I remember him saying he would often turn around and there'd be nobody there. Eerie, uncanny. As a fan, I talked to him about Django, and he told me that Django was a genius but needed a bath every now and again. And I also talked to him about the recording he made of My Melancholy Baby with Django and Stefan Grappelli. He lent me 2 LPs, which I'm afraid I've still got, because he passed away before I had a chance to send them back to him. He also tipped me off by saying there's more to Melancholy Baby than meets the eye, and next time we meet, I'll tell you about it. But we never did, sadly. So I set about trying to find out what the story was about Melancholy Baby, and Larry Adler was right.
April 6, 1917, and the United States took up arms to join the Allies. Recruits came, bankers, bakers, men from every walk of life.
And when the US entered the conflict in 1917, one of the men who signed up first for action was Ernie Burnett. In one fierce assault, Ernie's regiment suffered a large number of casualties, and sadly, Ernie was one of them. There was a pile of dead bodies, and he was identified by his dog tag. The sad news of Ernie's death was announced by Paul Whiteman on his radio show. Ernie was followed to that great Tin Pan Alley in the sky by the lyricist George Norton, who died from tuberculosis in Tucson, Arizona in 1923. But their song went on from strength to strength.
Come to me, my melancholy baby,
cuddle up and don't be blue. All your fears are foolish fancy, maybe. Well, you know, dear, that I'm in love with you.
Every cloud must have a silver lining. Wait until the sun shines through. Smile, my honey dear, while I kiss away each tear, or else I shall be melancholy.
Even touring groups who sang to the sick and injured in hospitals and old people's homes had to include it in their repertoire. One day, one of these groups began to sing Melancholy Baby to a group of veterans. Some had lost their arms and legs, and worse, some were simply shells of human beings. They had PTSD. And one of them, a man who was known simply as X, a man who had no memory of anything before the war, suddenly spoke up. And he said, "Hey, that's my song." So the leader of the musical group said, "No, that's not. That's Melancholy Baby. It was written by George Norton and Ernie Burnett." But the man who was known as X said, "No, that's my song. I wrote that song." So in the weeks that followed, the man's memory returned, and the truth was slowly discovered. Somehow, Ernie Burnett's dog tag had found its way onto someone else's body. Ernie Burnett hadn't died, and his melody, My Melancholy Baby, had stirred and then recovered his memory for him. So I suppose it's time we met him. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Ernie Burnett.